I moved, so I've been quiet for the last week because I've been busy moving and settling in. I'm out of the parsonage where I was living before. Over the last 4 years, it's been easier to just not say as much about where I'm living while I'm living there. I lived in Asheville, North Carolina for a while, and it was pretty peaceful, and I didn't have a lot of disruptions in my life. But I think part of that was I never mentioned where I was living. It just makes things smoother. But I needed to get out of the last place, and I did. Um, if you don't know me, I'm Megan Mason. I have been kind of unhoused, or I don't say unhoused. Ugh, I say homeless. I have been homeless or living in kind of precarious, or been living in kind of precarious circumstances for the last 4 years. 5 years ago, I discovered that my ex-husband, Peter Matt, who is a financial criminal from Germany, I discovered that he wasn't just committing a lot of money laundering and tax evasion, he was also involved in judicial corruption. In other words, bribing judges, court appointees. And by doing that, he managed to destroy my life and prevent me from contact with my children. And I was fortunate because I discovered a ton of evidence. It wasn't just a hunch that the big bad city lawyers were beating up a little country girl. It was 300 pages of evidence of a lot of corruption in the office of the clerk under Clerk Dorothy Brown, office of the clerk under Clerk Iris Martinez, and especially in the Domestic Relations Division of the Circuit Court of Cook County under, and that's Chicago, the Cook County machine, under presiding Judge Grace Dickler. And the reason that she resigned in quiet anonymity instead of filling out her term. She's not in jail because J.B. Pritzker is protecting her along with all the other criminals. And Trump is protecting them as well. It seems to be a bipartisan commitment to criminality in Illinois. But that's been going on a long time, I guess. So after I found all this evidence, Merrick Garland's DOJ issued me whistleblower numbers. There was very active investigation because of my evidence. People were assigned to protect me. And then for some reason, Merrick Garland decided not to prosecute this case that implicates Senator Dick Durbin and every other powerful Democrat in Illinois, including J.B. Pritzker. And to top it off, the cherry on the sundae is that you think I'm batshit crazy because you haven't read that in the New York Times. You haven't heard about that on MS Now. It hasn't been a sake bomb, so I must be making it up. So your belief that I'm batshit crazy has led to me continue to be unhoused. I can't have a driver's license. I can't have income. It's all garnished by the judges I testified about before Merrick Garland threw me to the wolves. And so since I can't have an income, it's really hard to have a home. Since I can't drive, it's hard to get jobs. Since when I got jobs, all of my income's garnished. There's not a lot of point driving on an illegal license. So I've had to rely on the kindness of strangers. And originally, I was living on some property that I inherited that my mother very eagerly offloaded for me. But when I was burdened with property ownership, I was living off-grid in a cabin, and there was a conservative church 10 miles away, and I asked the pastor if I could please use their spigot to get water for washing and doing dishes and laundry because I didn't have running water. I knew this minister because he and his wife had been part of a jailhouse ministry that was in Montcalm County Jail when I was sent there. On February 10th, 2025, I was driving from my cabin when a driver was following me. I assumed it was a U.S. Marshal because when you've been involved with the Department of Justice, that's kind of the person that's often involved, or a state trooper deputized as U.S. Marshal. And so I was driving. This guy was tailgating me on icy roads. I pulled over for him to pass, and he didn't pass. And Karen was driving by, and she saw me on the side of the road, looking at this man who had passed with an axe over my shoulder. I didn't threaten him. He never said I threatened him. I didn't threaten her. She never said I threatened her. I didn't harm any property, and the axe was stowed in my car. I was charged with felony assault with a deadly weapon for the soccer mom who from 20 feet away saw me standing on the shoulder of a road in a wooded area holding an axe, which I put in the back with the tarp where I had wood that I chopped with an axe. So I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, but there wasn't a victim. There wasn't property damage. So that was odd. But the really odd thing was that the state trooper who wrote a report 3 hours after Karen, I guess, saw a woman with an axe and became perturbed, the state trooper neglected to write that there had been a man on the shoulder of the road behind me. That was who I was interacting with. This was a problem. Karen saw the man, and if you ever watched her body cam footage, she would say that she saw him. There was nearby video surveillance that showed the man, but the state trooper didn't write that the man was there in the police report. He wrote that I was talking to myself. So this is where it gets really funny. A bumpkin lawyer named Lori Shearer was assigned as my public defender, and Lori Shearer was both stupid and lazy. So she read the police report. It said there was no man on the side of the road. If she had wanted to spend a little time, she could have looked at Sandra Jordan, the Karen who said I had yelled at a man with an axe. And she could have looked at Sandra Jordan's statement and seen, oh gosh, there was a man on the side of the road. She could have looked at the video camera and seen, oh gosh, there was a man on the side of the road. Notably, she could have followed legal ethics, and you're supposed to believe your client unless you have a reason to think they're lying. And even if you think they're mentally ill, you're supposed to act as they wish, because mentally ill people are allowed to have wishes too. I was not then and never have been diagnosed with a mental illness. I'm just putting that out there for legal ethics. If Lori had been a competent attorney, or in other words, if I had been given access to effective counsel, someone who was not Lori Shearer, they would have looked at the evidence. And notably, when I said there was a man on the side of the road, they would have believed me or looked at the evidence to see what it said. Instead, Lori Shearer said, the police report said there was no man on the side of the road. Therefore, you are crazy. Therefore, you are going to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. Therefore, you are going to tell the judge that you're incompetent to stand trial. And I said, no, I will not do that because that's not true. And long story short, Lori had me locked up for 7 months. And then the funny thing is, as soon as I was legally allowed to fire Lori because she had the judge declare me incompetent, it turned out that I have no mental illness. There was a man on the side of the road. The police report, for some reason, didn't mention him, but I did not have a psychotic delusion. But I did serve 7 months without a trial or any hearing as to my ability before it happened. While I served 90 days before a bed was made available to restore me to competency in a county jail, I was never allowed to go outside, and I was starved. I was 119 pounds by the time I was transferred out of the jail because I wasn't ever given enough food. I was physically threatened, though not assaulted. When I was placed in a hospital, I was assaulted 3 times. 2 sexual assaults. 2 times male patients assaulted me in the courtyard and grabbed my breasts while I was trying to do yoga or exercise. And on a 3rd occasion, a female patient came into my room while I was sleeping and pummeled my head. She struck me in the head at least 10 times with her fist, the area that I couldn't protect with my arms. At that time, I was in a wheelchair, so I couldn't walk And the person assigned to sit outside my door was in another part of the hospital having a conversation. So she didn't hear my screams. So I received a concussion and multiple contusions. That's just a side note that I was assaulted while I was serving time for not assaulting somebody. Ain't justice grand. So, but during the time waiting to go to a hospital to be beaten, I was in Montcalm County Jail. And there was a fundamentalist pastor and his wife who liked to come into the jail and try to recruit people to evangelical Christianity. I attended one of his services, and he showed an episode of a TV show called The Chosen, which I prefer to read the Bible. I don't watch a lot of TV. I usually like to watch high quality TV. And if somebody's going to interpret the Bible for me, I usually like it to be an intelligent, thoughtful person. The Bible presents, The Chosen doesn't check those boxes for me. So I didn't choose to be part of that ministry. Fundamentalists like to keep lists of people who want to be saved. I was not interested in being on their list, and I was not interested in hearing a lot of what this person had to say. And I did appreciate his wife would come to our jail cell, and she was the only person I ever got to talk to. And I was shut in a room 24 hours a day under a light with a camera on me. So I was appreciative of any person who spoke to me. And so sometimes I would get a postcard from her, or like a book, and I'd read it if it was interesting. A lot of times we like to use the things she gave us for origami paper to make beauty out of it instead of whatever they were doing with the print. But this couple, we did not form a spiritual or a personal relationship, but I knew that they had water. So when I asked to borrow water, long story short, they moved me into the parsonage, which was very generous. Pastor's a Christian nationalist, and it's a congregation of about 30 families. And so everyone knows each other. And those who are not Christian nationalists tend to be very conservative, fundamentalist Christians. They all are fascinated with Armageddon. They like to gather around, and they get a real sense of urgency. Like, Jim is sick and we don't know if he's saved. And it's kind of like I don't know, they think it's really important to focus on whether someone's brother-in-law in Montana is saved. I prefer to focus on the work before me. I think the Bible says that we should live joyfully, help our neighbors, be good to the aliens, that's the immigrants. A lot of times we're told to be good to the immigrants, the poor people, the orphans, the widows. That just usually means like going out and doing good things in the community, to me, rather than sitting around and perseverating on others. Also, since I've dealt with codependency, to me, it's very codependent behavior to sit around gossiping about people and believing that their beliefs somehow are making you make an impact in the world that has any meaning. I don't know. I guess I respect people who hang out in bars more because they know they're dicking around. So, and obviously, so it's not nice to live there when you're silently judging people. Or I wasn't really silently judging people. I post videos like this and then think, oh, well, maybe I can get a place to live. And, maybe if they kill me, someone will know. I joke. But then I'd take them down. I don't think I'll take this one down because I think I've burned the boats. And I was grateful. They were financially generous. They gave me things. But there was also the church as a whole collectively engaged in communities that I found deeply unethical. So in addition to the outright corruption in Chicago that destroyed my life, I was involved in family court corruption that is a global problem. In 2023, UN Rapporteur on Women and Children, Reem Alsalem, wrote a report, The Global Crisis in Family Courts. At that time, Biden's DOJ and the UN, the American Psychiatric Academy, I think, or Pediatric Academy, all found her report compelling, and most notably, the research was very disturbing. What this report found was looking at family courts around the world, basically, and this is especially true for wealthier families. So people assume that anyone who's wealthy does not have problems in courts. That's why wealthy women, I mean, I'm not wealthy, but I was, relative to the other population, very privileged. Just to be in a litigated divorce means that somebody has money who you are married to. But that's how it works out so disproportionately, because if you're married to a wealthy man who wants to destroy your life, the court is geared towards that. And this is not like a hunch or a conspiracy theory. Alsalem's research and research of many other people, and the countries are countries like Australia, the United States, England, Israel, Brazil, maybe Canada, countries with high GDP, Ireland, Germany, countries with a high GDP, highly educated population. So this is not, this is different than child removal cases, which is another form of corruption in the United States, like DHS or DCFS. So these family court, the corruption has led to an industry of experts where basically child abusers are always privileged. So, and this is true when cases where a child alleges a parent has abused them, not a parent. So as mothers, if we know the parent is abusing us, we know that we never tell the judges. This is what, the lawyers and everyone you hire, if you have privilege, tells you. Don't ever mention child abuse. Don't ever mention domestic abuse. Don't ever say he abused you. And this is especially true if he abused you. That is paradoxical, but that is how the courts work. Because even when the child alleges abuse, the likelihood goes up exponentially that the child would be placed with the parent they said abused them. That is how the courts work. And it is most true in cases of child sex abuse. This leads, I know many women in countries around the world, some of them prominent, most of them highly educated, in socially powerful positions. So these are not necessarily people who start out this process with any sort of addiction or allegation of mental health issues. Same as me. There's never any sort of question about my parenting abilities, for example, including up till the time the judge barred me from all contact with my children. Nobody ever said I did anything wrong parenting-wise. So these people have impeccable reputations, and yet the courts disproportionately will take our children and give them to the abusers. And it's partly, I think it's just economics when you get down to it. At the end of the day, people who want to coerce and control are going to find ways to steal and hoard and control money so that they have leverage over you. That includes their wives. That includes the people they love dearly, because a coercive controller, a narcissist, a psychopath, whatever you want to call the monsters that I marry, whatever you want to call him or her, women do it too. They are going to disproportionately seek out all the situations where they have power over people. That's where they're going to try to be in jobs like law enforcement or nursing. That's where you're going to find people who can find, and not all the people who do that are going to be coercive controllers, but they are going to look for those opportunities, and they're going to create family dynamics like that. And that includes, cutting people off from their livelihood, from their social networks, from their resources, grinding them down so that they feel like they have no ability to leave, and subjecting you to more and more indignities and abuse. And in my case, it was financial abuse from my ex-husband. Even while we were married, he would intentionally create a constant financial crisis so that I didn't know how I would feed the children, so that I was always in a panic mode. That's how he controlled me. So then when it comes to the court process, when there are private interests, meaning you can pay people to be lawyers and consultants and court appointees, and in Chicago, you can just directly pay bribes to buy child custody, then that means the rich, abusive, coercive controller is going to win. And people like that, this is also true of people who want to do unspeakable things to their own children. Um, I don't know what the statistics are, but I assume if all child sex abuse were reported, it would be found that the vast majority of pedophiles get married and have their own children as a way to hide their depravity. That is my suspicion. And people act like the call isn't coming from inside the house. But it stands to reason that if someone is demented enough to marry someone to raise victims, that, yeah, that person is going to take some measures to make sure the court cases go their way. And Reem Alsalem proved that by aggregating research all over the world, and it was documented, and it's real, and it happens to people like me. And instead of helping me, you lock me up. And it also drives a lot of women to suicide, which makes a lot of sense. I had to make myself stay alive, knowing that my teenage boys were with somebody who had hit them and locked them in rooms to force them to do worksheets, would keep my younger son up at all hours to do extra soccer training, would have coaches that the coaches didn't know about, because if they knew how much they were training, they wouldn't let him train that hard because he was still growing, torturing them to control him because he can't control himself. He's a weak, stupid, ineffectual man who inherited some money, and the only thing he knows how to do is to control the humans that he keeps captive through marriage or childhood. He's really bad, but he's not raping a 3-year-old girl. And I know people who had judges order the little girls into that rape, and they have to try to stay alive while that's happening, and nobody helps them. Nobody reports on it in the New York Times. Nobody says, hey, maybe instead of Amber Heard, we could talk about this little girl who has to get raped every day in America, and the courts don't want to help her because kind of gives us the ick to talk about pedophile. Let's just let it happen. So that's what we are up against. We're up against them, and we're up against fucking you. So I'm coming from this background, and whether you're woke, conservative, MAGA, liberal, no matter if you're an American, you want me to put these problems behind me. Like, oh, this horrible thing happened to you. So, yeah, I can't talk to my children, and I can't earn money, and I can't drive a car, and everything was taken from me, and none of it's been given back yet. So it didn't happen. It's happening. And I don't have rights. I'm not a citizen. And I am not going to pretend that you put the hat on the snowman and that I'm a citizen again, because it makes you uncomfortable that you live in a country that does it to people like me. So I went to live in this house, and this community is helping me. I thought, well, I'll just sprint and get a job really fast, and maybe I'll be able to pay my driver's license. And I can't now. I have a background check that says I can't work with kids, and there aren't a lot of banks hiring, much less hiring hobos. I think AI is better than a hobo, and although I still have my licensing, so I could trade securities. Not the securities. So then I'm living with these fundamentalists taking care of me, and like within the first few weeks, I was sitting there, and this guy from the church wanted to come up, and he's all like red face, scratchy voice, heavy drinker, and he's like crying, testifying, because he's a born-again Christian, but wants to share his testimony because he was a wicked man before he was saved. And he starts his testimony by shit-talking his wife, who he's leaving. He's already got another girlfriend, but apparently the church needs to know that his soon-to-be ex-wife was texting or dating other men, and he discovered that, and he hit her. And so the church was there to just forgive him and give him the support he needed, because he had to do some jail for hitting his wife. And then I was working in the church office to pay for my rent, and this guy comes in like every week to do his special kissing up to the pastor, and I don't know, talking about Christian nationalism and beating wives. And so the whole church rallied around him. And then I got to sit in the church office one day when this other woman, the treasurer's wife, I always want to be really nice to them, she came in, and the drunk who likes to hit his wife was talking to her about how grateful he was. And she's a former parole officer. So she's a former parole officer, and the wife beater's doing regular soul sessions with the Christian nationalist jail minister. And then I guess through their prayers, this guy, Roger, was able to not only come out from under this domestic violence charge, but the judge decided that he should have custody of his 2-year-old instead of his slut ex-wife and his teenage daughter. And I guess the children didn't like to be taken away from their mother, so it was really hard. So they were praying that the children would know that Jesus wanted them to lose their mom and go live with a wife beater. And they were so grateful because in his abundant generosity, the Lord, via the family court judge, had even decided that Roger didn't have to give his slut ex-wife the house that was awarded in the divorce anymore, that now he would just get to keep the house. And so he would get the kids and the house, and she could just, go be a whore. But maybe she'll be saved again. That's all that matters. So I didn't vibe with them. And and then there's also a pedophile there that they love. They have a summer camp to bring children to meet him. And I'm done shit talking. So I've moved on. I have no idea what I'm gonna do or where I'm gonna go. But I'm here now, and I'm okay. Nobody needs to hire a private investigator. I promise.